Network Plus Study Group pre-show is live. If you're watching this on the replay, you can fast forward about 15 minutes and start things then. If you're watching live, well, you're stuck with me. We've got 15 minutes for me to make sure things are working before we start things up. Are we making sure things are working? That's working. Let's check cameras, shall we? Camera. Let's go to the program cameras so you can see what I see. There's one, there's two. There's one with the number. There's two, there's camera 3 and camera 4. How about the graphics camera? Yeah, that's good. That's all good, peoples. That is all good. Let's tell the chat room that we are live. Let's copy that, send that, put that there, and then go to the website. How's this website stuff work again? Let's figure it out. We click on this. I always like it when I click on things and nothing happens. It happens, it's just slowly. There we go. Let's go to the announcement bar at the top of the page so that people know that it's live. So study group is today is my free live study group, my free network plus study group is live right now. Click here to join us. /live. It's really not an us, is there? It's me. It's kind of the way it works. Let's reset the cookie. Save the changes. Hey, congratulations on passing your Network Plus, Eric. That is fabulous news. Passed it on a Tuesday. Well done. Didn't take it on a Monday. That was smart. Could have taken it on a Friday. That would have just asked for trouble, really. All right, let's get rid of bookmark bar. Bookmark bar. That's all good. Okay. So let's do an audio check. We haven't done that. So let's go to live, and do an audio check. 2, 3, 4, 5. Check, 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 check. Checkity, check, check, check. Let's click the play, except there's the chat. Click the play button, and let's see what it sounds like. Let's turn this down for you guys. Oh, it's not turned on. Check. Checkity, check, check, check. Let's click the play. That's not bad. That's not horrible. We'll take it. I can live with that. We'll start up in about 12 minutes, folks. 12 minutes. Now's the time to collect all the things that you'll need, whatever those things are. I have my coffee, and this live stream's up. That's kind of what I need. Socrative is up, so if you're waiting to get into Socrative, you can go to Socrative. Oh, I didn't put live thing in there. Let's do live. There we go. There we go. The blasts will go out email and Twitter and Facebook and Google Plus and those things in a few minutes. So we should get a number of folks joining us then and doing that. How's the temperature? Is it good? Is everybody good temperature-wise? Okay. It seems okay. Might be a little cool. Might be a tad cool. We'll see. The lights haven't been on very long, so we'll get the lights on and get those things going. Battle station's looking better than ever. I need to clean up some more of these wires that are in front of me. I was able to get rid of a number of things. Could probably put caps back on throat sprays at this point. What else do we need to do? I think we've got everything we need there. The camera remote is stuck under this. My remotes need to go over here where I can't screw up the camera. All right. And I think all this is working. So, in fact, let's do a refresh and make sure Everybody's good with that. They are. I want this over here. I want that over there. Okay. I think we are ready. How's those? That's working okay. That's audio's good over there. What did I miss? There's obviously something I missed because we were like 10 minutes to go and it all looks like it's ready. So something's not quite right. We'll figure it out later. Okay. What else have we got going on here? This is all good. Questions are up. Socrative is there. Is anybody in Socrative? Let's see. You're looking over my shoulder, so you should be able to tell. There we go. There's some folks answering in Socrative. If you haven't been here before, we answer questions online live. These are the questions I'm seeing in front of me. I'll give you a description of how to do that, but the quick way to do it is to go to pop open a new window or load the Socrative student app. Socrative.com. And the room name, there it is for the chat room. All right. So now, what do we got going on? We got Socrative running. Folks are answering. Hope the presentation works. I'm sure it'll be fine. Why don't I grab flash drive? Okay. Now we have things to show and tell. Is that going to stay? Yes, it is. All right. For those of you hanging out for the pre-show, I swear it's not, this is not how it goes. There's an actual show that happens. This is the pre-show where I check and make sure everything's working. And we've got 7 minutes to go before we get started. Another couple of minutes before everybody gets the social networking and email blasts to go in there. And I'm sitting on my headphones, so I'm getting jerked back every time I sit back like that. Let's not do that. Although it would make for a very humorous study group session, I assure you. There is, yeah, the audio is checking out. I'm looking at my meters. You can't see it up higher. There's a big screen, and I'm looking at a bunch of other things there. Can I show you that? I don't think I have the video hub set up, but let's see. Let's see if I can shift things around. Oh, I can. Let's see. Right now, you're looking at the bird cam, but I could send to you TriCaster control. So this is what I see up on my big screen. Now I've got, of course, pictures and the pictures and the pictures. So I'm looking at the audio meter. You can kind of see it flashing next to, which side is it on? Right here. See this audio meter that's kind of going up and down, trying to keep it out of the red. And that's what I was looking at to see exactly what was going on there. Let's go back to the bird cam. And the audio looks good. As long as I'm out of the red. In fact, I could go a little bit louder if I wanted to. If you're waiting for the teacher, you're in the wrong room. You spelled it wrong. You have to back out and go to room Professor Messer. PROFESSORMESSER. Because the room is open and available, and you would see a question right now. Is there subnetting today? Let's have a look real quick. Is there anything relating to subnetting? Is such a small part of the exam that we can't do it every week. There's some wireless. There's some connectors. There is some switching technologies. There is some broadcast domain stuff. We might not get to that. There's some tools and cablings and firewalls, but no subnetting this week. Can't get there every week. So it's about I create about 10 questions, and we probably usually get through 8. And the subnetting is such a tiny part of the Network Plus. It's growing. They're making it a little bit more of the Network Plus exam now, I've noticed. And but if I spend every week on that, you'll get the impression that it has some huge overarching importance to the exam, which it does not. You could know 0 subnetting, and if you knew everything else, you would still pass the exam. That's not true for other exams like the Cisco exams, where you have to know everything about subnetting, or you're just going to fail, period. I need throat spray today for this. Well, you say it's a nice streaming setup, but for this, it's a nice streaming setup. If I wanted to stream to Twitch, if I wanted to bring up Destiny or, Sniper or whatever I'm playing that day, I really don't have the right configuration to do it the way I want. So I say that it's set up. It's not really set up. If I was doing it on this computer, if I was on World of Warcraft or Diablo or something like that, you would be able to see pretty well because I'm coming right out of the back of the video. That's how, well, what screen? This screen here is right out of the video that's right in front of me. You can't see it. There you go. This is the screen right in front of me. And so everything there, it's at 1080p. It's at a full HD resolution for that. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Okay. What have we got left to do? We got 2 minutes. 2 minutes, Mr. Sinatra. 2 minutes. So if you can get a warm beverage in 2 minutes, you're very good. Did you see that? It almost got me. There is quite a bit. Welcome, everyone. I saw that the Twitter blasts and the email and the Facebooks and the Google Pluses went out, so that's all good. It's now just a matter of getting this thing started and going, and going through all of this. We'll see how the questions go this week. I think they're pretty good myself. What is going on? All right, we're going to switch over here real quick. I got to look at something that I don't want you to see because there's things I got private you can't see. You can't see them. Now, why did... Okay. Of course, these questions come up as I'm doing other things. We're about ready to get going. I should probably set this up so that we can do these things. What's next, everybody? I'm expecting a delivery. My Hamiltone should be coming soon. What was it that went out right now? It's just the wind. It's going to rain today. That's what's going on. Okay, it's time to get started. Let's do something. This will be neat. It'll be fun. Trust me. Okay, it'll be all right. I should probably set the bar very low, and then we'd be good with this. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the April 2016 Professor Messer Network Plus Study Group. This is my live study group where I ask you networking questions, and you can answer live online and see if you happen to know the answers. And then I'll reveal the answer, and we'll step through all of these things. If you're studying for your Network Plus exam, this is a great way to test your knowledge. If you already have your Network Plus certification, maybe it's a good way to figure out if this is the type of knowledge that you should be working with on these. There's a lot we're going to go through today. I've got a lot of questions. During this first hour, we do Q&A, and then we go into kind of an after show mode where I'll open up the phone lines and you can call me and ask questions directly, or I'll take questions also from the chat room. Either way, whatever's easiest for you, I'm fine to do that. If you are watching this live on YouTube, then you can certainly flip over to the Professor Messer website where there is a chat room where I'm watching the chats go by. You go to professormesser.com/live and you would be able to do that as well. I want to thank everybody for joining us today and for your support throughout the month. I wouldn't be able to do these study groups without your going and watching all the videos. Of course, all of my Network Plus videos are live to watch online, so every single one of them absolutely free, which is crazy, but there it is. And I wouldn't be able to do these study groups unless you are watching them. And of course, you can also follow what we're doing on Twitter and YouTube. And if you're planning to take your exam, don't forget about our vouchers link for a discount on your vouchers at professormesser.com/vouchers. There's also, for those of you that want a version of our Network Plus course that is offline, I have an offline version of it too. I have the box right here, as a matter of fact. Here's one of them, the Network Plus course, and I've got a flash drive that, look at the nice little logoed flash drive there. It's kind of hard to see with all the lights there, but I'll send you the flash drive, and it's got the entire Network Plus course on it. I'll ship it right to you. It's something that if you're offline, you're on a plane, a train, there's not a good internet connection where you live, this may be a good way to get your hands on all of the materials. And I also include with this all the videos. They're all closed captioned by a human being, so they're very good closed captions. All of the MP3 files are there, so if you wanted to take these MP3 files and take them with you on your commute, they are included with this package. You can also buy them separately as well if you're someone who just needs the audio. And this also includes my course notes. We'll talk more about the course notes later on in the presentation. Now, if you are watching this live, you can answer the questions along with me. Now, if you're watching this on the replay, I'm sorry, we can't change the laws of physics enough to allow you to participate with everyone else live, but this is one good way you can do it if you are watching. It's another good reason to join us live when we do these events. You can find out about the events at professormesser.com/calendar. To be able to answer these questions, you can pop open a new browser window and go to Socrative.com and go to room name Professor Messer. You would click the student login button and go to the room Professor Messer, all one word, and make sure you spell it right or you won't see the questions. It's PROFESSORMESSER. It's a little bit confusing, I realize, but it sort of rhymes, so I go with it. There's also an app you can get for your mobile device. No matter what kind of mobile device or browser you're using, this will work on your mobile device as well. You might want to consider doing that too. Now, if you are able to log in properly to Socrative.com and go to the Professor Messer room, then you should see a question like this that asks, how long have you been studying for your Network Plus certification? And you'll have a choice. You can answer some things. Let's see if I have my yellow marker up here. Is it less than 3 months, 3 to 6 months, 6 to 9 months, 9 months to a year, over a year, or some of you already have your Network Plus certification, which is good because sometime in this first hour, I will be giving you a special code word that you can send to me for a 1 hour of continuing education units. You can only accumulate these CEUs if you already have your Network Plus certification. If you already have an A+ certification, this particular live group is also something you can apply towards your A+ CEUs as well. So that's a couple of things you can do. And you can see that almost 45% of us have been studying for our Network Plus certification less than 3 months. That works pretty well. 3 to 6 months, 17%, 19%, 6 to 9 months. So the bulk of us are really here in the first 9 months. You can see some of us have been studying for over a year. As I've mentioned earlier in other study groups, that's sort of the way I study. It takes me a long time. It to study for a certification. And 10% of you that are answering questions in Socrative already have your Network Plus certification. So you want to listen out for the continuing education units. I had somebody send me an email this past month saying, I watched this twice and I didn't hear you give them, because I give them very quick. So you really have to listen. That's the whole point of learning what the continuing education secret code word is, so that I know you actually watched it. And I can, if you've watched it 7 times and you still haven't gotten it, email me and I'll ask you some other questions. We'll figure out a way to do this. Now, if you recall, the Network Plus certification has been around since last year. It's been just over a year now. It was released on February the 28th of 2015. And what CompTIA generally does is they update the certification about every 3 years. So you would see 2015, 16, 17. By 2018, they're going to come out with a new version. So you end up having people ask all the time, when is this going to be retired, because I don't want to have to study for this version and then suddenly have to change wagons in the middle of the stream. So this is one where it does become important to be able to know when these timeframes are. In this case, got plenty of time. If you're watching this live or you're watching this in April of 2016, you can see you've got 2 more years. In fact, there's usually a time frame where it's overlap with the previous version. So they might release the new version in February of 2018. There's still going to be a number of months. So in 2018, in April of 2018, you'll probably still be able to take this version of the Network Plus exam. So don't worry about the time frames. You're great right now. Everything you're going to learn today will apply towards the Network Plus exam that you will be taking sometime in the next couple of years. So let's do some questions, shall we? Let's jump into the Network Plus Q&A. And I have, first off, not a traditional A, B, C, D, or E question. I decided to start with the true false. We're gonna lean into this a little bit. We're just going to take tiny steps to get going. But now we have to really think about this question, because my true or false question is, a router forwards broadcasts. Does a router forward broadcasts or not? Is this true or false? In your A+, Network Plus, Security Plus certification, you're probably used to seeing multiple choice questions. And Network Plus has plenty of multiple choice questions on it. But they could ask you fill in the blank questions. They could ask you true or false questions. They could ask you matching questions. They could ask you to do things at a command line. It doesn't have to be. In fact, it will not only be multiple choice questions. You will get what CompTIA calls performance-based questions, which are effectively everything but a multiple choice question. So I thought, oh, you're right. Socrative does. Oh, I'm now messing everyone up because Socrative has it different. All right. I changed it because I thought it'd be confusing. Socrative has it as a router does not forward broadcast. This is what Socrative says. There you go. See, I fixed it, which actually changes the answer. So let's see. So is this true or false? A router does not forward broadcast. Don't you think the way I just had it was a lot better? This way is not good at all. Now, router does not forward broadcast. Now I have to think. Actually, as someone who has seen some of the exam questions, I've not taken this particular version of the exam so that I am not bound by the candidate agreement for this exam, which means if I happen to have seen questions for the exam through other means, I'm still okay to talk about them. Found a little legal loophole there. But now you can look, true or false, router does not forward broadcast. And don't worry if you already answered it one way or the other, because we're going to answer it and you're going to know the answer when we're at the end of it. So don't worry about the way it's doing. I am trolling you. I apologize. See, we're already off to a great start with this study group. A router does not forward broadcast. And you can see it's really true or false. We have to figure this one out. So we're going to look at the answer. And of course, it doesn't matter because some of you probably answered based on what I told you and not what was on Socrative. I promise you the next ones will be good. Everybody gets this one right. Let's find out, though, the answer, because this is a really important thing. This came up actually, a question about this came up on Reddit this week, and What I found interesting about this question is not everybody was really clued in on exactly where broadcasts go, what they pass through, and what they stop at. And this is very important, not just for your Network Plus exam, but the folks that were asking the question needed to know for the Cisco exams as well. So this is you'll find this everywhere. And of course, this becomes very important when you are trying to troubleshoot a network and you see a broadcast, you're looking at a packet capture and you're trying to figure out where did this come from and where did it go? Who saw this broadcast? And you need to determine and know immediately what particular devices could have been affected by this particular broadcast. So let's talk about broadcast domains. This is really the thing we need to know. A broadcast domain it's important because at least for IP version 4, there are no broadcasts in IP version 6. In IP version 4, you have to have some way to tell everybody in the room something. Just like taking a megaphone, like you see here, and really telling everybody who's there, hey, I'm looking for a particular device. If anybody happens to know this particular IP address, whoever has this IP address, could you please tell me your MAC address? That's an ARP. That's an easy one. This is one where you have to have broadcasts. It's a necessary evil in being able to work through this. I think whenever we look at broadcasts, it becomes a little bit of a challenge to determine then how far it goes. So all you have to remember is that a switch passes a broadcast and a router does not. That's all you have to remember. But this is also extremely important to remember, is that you have to be able to see where the switches are and where the routers are. Now, in the Cisco certification, in fact, I think it's in the Network Plus certifications, the exam objectives as well, there's also a lot of conversation about collision domains, which is sort of an old school kind of conversation. We're not going to talk about collision domains today, but there aren't generally collisions anymore on full duplex Ethernet networks. So it's not a technology that you'll often see being used. Well, you'll never see it being used. I won't even say often. You're not going to find a domain that has collisions in it any longer because nobody's running half duplex Ethernet. So let's talk about broadcast domains. This is a good example of a broadcast domain. You've got a switch here. This is a single broadcast domain. A switch will pass broadcast. So where's my yellow? There he is. So if this device sends out a broadcast, everybody connected to this switch is going to see that broadcast. I'm assuming here that this switch is a single VLAN. Let's not complicate things. I'm drawing a simple picture for those of you familiar with the process. This is a single VLAN on a switch, and everybody connecting to that can see any broadcast that's going back and forth. You can also have multiple broadcast domains. So here's a switch over here. Here's a switch over here. Sort of got this red broadcast domain and this, is it a blue? A blue broadcast domain. It's hard to see. But you can see these are separated with a router. And that means the broadcasts from the red side aren't going to make it over to the blue side. And the broadcasts on the blue side are not going to be able to make it to the red side because broadcasts don't go through a router. That is if you remember that, you're great. The router stops the broadcasts. And it's good that it does. Otherwise, we'd have broadcasts going everywhere all over the world. One of the reasons we try to keep subnets small is because with certain applications and certain operating systems using certain things, the number of broadcasts can get very high. It can really take over and use a lot of the bandwidth on the network. So instead of, to avoid those broadcast storms, we keep the subnets relatively small, somewhere around 60 to 100 devices probably is the maximum you'd ever want to do unless you had some type of broadcast suppression in place, which is not generally done. So if we look at our question, and the question was, a router does not forward broadcasts. Well, that's true. A router does not forward broadcasts. So the answer on Socrative is true. That's a difficult question, though. I bet that's a common way the question will be asked in the exam. Sort of a double negative, isn't it? True or false, it doesn't do something. You really have to think about this. It's difficult that you would have to write out a logic diagram to answer some of these questions on the exam, but they are asking a very specific question. A router does not forward broadcasts. Is that true? Yeah, that's true. A router does not forward broadcasts. Just keep that in mind. If you ever see a question about broadcast domains or broadcast storms or where broadcasts are going, That's what you have to remember. Hey, I did. I reached my peak of 50-50. That's what we're trying to do, right? So I will tell you, though, we're going to make this a little bit easier for the next question. I promise you. In fact, let's do that right now. Let's keep it going. So if you answered a router does not forward broadcasts, it's true. Router does not forward the broadcasts. So here's a good one. This one is not a fill in the blank. I didn't change the question. This is exactly the same question that I'm showing you here that is on Socrative. So this will help. And this one is a fill in the blank. I wanted to give you a couple of different performance-based questions, ideas, things you might be presented with on an actual exam, or at least the idea that it's not going to be a multiple choice question. So I wanted to start with a couple of those. So the question is, what port number would you enable in a firewall to allow encrypted remote console access? One of the things you'll notice on the Network Plus exam, lots of port numbers, lots of protocols, lots of abbreviations. It is chock full. It's chockers of all of these things. So you need to know all of these protocols that are listed in the exam objectives. You need to know all of the port numbers that are listed in the exam objectives. And notice I'm giving you a very narrow focus here in the exam objectives. I've seen on Reddit in the CompTIA subreddit where people have said, I've studied these 3 pages that have hundreds of port numbers on them, and I've almost got them all memorized. I'm thinking, well, they really only ask about 20 in the exam objectives. You really only needed to know 20 of those. A little bit more if you look at the protocols. So the question I have for you here is, I'm really asking you what port number you would enable. It's a 2-step process. I need to know a port number, but I'm also not asking you for a specific protocol. I'm asking you to allow encrypted remote console access. This is what your end users will often ask you. I need to get remote. I'm using this application. I need to be able to use this application. Well, what port number is that? I don't know. You're the network person. You tell me. And so you do need to know these things. You do need to have the answer for what an encrypted remote console access happens to be. Now, for those of you answering, some of you, I think most of you are answering pretty well on this one. And I didn't ask you, I asked you for a specific port number, but in your minds, you should also know what protocol, what transport protocol is being used for this as well. Is it TCP or UDP? Which one is it? So get that in your mind as well. I didn't ask this on the question. That's a little bonus question for you. Is this also something you would configure the firewall to pass TCP, or would it be to pass UDP? So that's the one you really need to work through, is both of those. Let's see how we did with this one. What port number would we enable in the firewall? Well, remote console access that is encrypted. So I really asked for a very specific protocol. Encrypted remote console access is SSH. SSH is secure shell. Secure shell. Secure shell is a way to get that encrypted access to a server and be able to use it. In fact, I was looking at I can't bring up my secure shell. Can I bring up my secure shell? Does it have something in here I don't want to show? So I have a secure shell up right now to the Professor Messer website. I think I can show this. I'm showing top. This is a list of what applications are in use on this particular device and what they're doing. You can see it's very busy right now with people going to the website. But although a lot of activity, I've got this tuned so that it doesn't have a lot of load on it at the moment. And that is an encrypted link I have to my server that is located far away from where I am. It uses the TCP protocol to be able to do this, and it is port number 22. So you absolutely need to be able to do that and work through those things. It's one of those, whenever I start looking at this big list, it is a finite list. So don't get too thrown by, there's a lot of port numbers I need to know. In this particular case, secure shell, TCP 22. 22 was the correct answer. I'm looking through the list of answers here. I don't think anybody has this, but you could see you got a lot of people answering this one. Some did say 22. Some said POP3. Nope, I was looking for a port number. Some said 443, which is encrypted. You were very close, but that's encrypted web traffic, not encrypted console or terminal communication. So those of you that answered 22, some of you said even TCP 22, bonus points for you. Those of you that in your mind said, yes, it's TCP, bonus points for you as well. Very good to have that there. Very useful to know. And if you're going to be doing any type of console communication to a device on your network these days, you would probably never use Telnet, ever. You will rarely find yourself using Telnet unless you're connecting to a device that's 20 years old, that has no concept of encryption. You would almost always, by default, be using this because it's encrypted communication, and why wouldn't you do that? It makes perfect sense. So well done with that. TCP22 was the answer. I have another question for you. No answering in the chat room. Some of you know what this is, but you are going to now, what kind of cable does this happen to be? You can see the picture comes up. And again, I've given you just a sort of a blank to fill in. I do have some questions coming up after this that are multiple choice. But again, I wanted to give you kind of a feel for these performance-based questions as they're coming through. What kind of cable is this? What kind? So if you think you know, go to Socrative.com, go to the room name Professor Messer, and you would be able to type in what kind of cable that is. Some of you are doing very well with this one. I think we're hitting at 50% on this one, however. Now remember, we don't want to answer in the chat room, so thank you for not doing that. We'll make sure that doesn't happen. There we go. There is quite a bit. Yeah, there are some servers out on the internet that do provide Telnet access, but for the things you're doing in your organization as a network professional, connecting to infrastructure devices, to switches, to routers, to firewalls, to servers, you're always going to be using SSH. You will never be using Telnet, and you should not ever be using Telnet. Cabling is important too on the Network Plus exam. There's a lot of different cabling connections, a lot of different types of cables to know how to use. You need to be able to put two cables up to each other, look at how they are pinned out on both sides, and determine what kind of cable is this. I'm kind of giving you this kind of question here. We're looking at one side of the cable, we're looking at the other side of the cable. What is this with these two sides of the cable? You need to be able to look at a cable and know exactly what you're looking at. It could save you a lot of time when you're troubleshooting, I assure you. A lot of time troubleshooting. It really does help. An organization's not going to use Telnet. They don't. Nobody out there uses Telnet. I'm speaking as someone who, prior to stopping a year ago and doing this full time for 7 years, was with a security startup with next generation firewalls, talking to the security people in the biggest companies in the world. And nobody uses Telnet because we know it's not secure. We don't use Telnet. This is, you always use SSH. There are cases where you could turn on Telnet for a device, but it would never be used in production. You would just never set yourself up for that kind of security issue and being able to work through that. There are a number of things. Yeah, if you have, there's no one out there that is using Telnet to do that. If they're using Telnet to talk to their servers, then something is drastically wrong. Or as I mentioned, there may be a device that's 20 years old and you don't have a choice. And I guarantee you they're working to get rid of that. So let's see what kind of cable this happens to be. I think I have a picture of this right here. This is a Yoast cable, or what we call a rollover cable. So if you chose, or if you typed in rollover or Yoast, you are absolutely correct with this one. This is commonly also called a Cisco console cable, although not all Cisco devices have console cables. That's another one that's useful to know about too, because you don't want to plug in this knowing that this says it's a Cisco console cable, and you plug in it doesn't work, because not all Cisco consoles actually use this configuration. Many of them do. And you do need to know how to set these up. You don't necessarily need to know the colors here as much as you need to know that for a rollover cable, pin 1 goes to pin 8, pin 2 goes to pin 7, pin 3 goes to pin 4. And generally, that's how they work through these pieces. It is a standard, though. You still see it used on a number of Cisco devices generally. You don't see it outside the piece of this to be able to do it and have that there. It's not something you really run into, but commonly it's a serial port communication. If you have obviously one of the newer devices, newer laptops, it doesn't have a serial port. So you usually have a USB that converts to a serial, and that's what you're plugging in with this Yoast cable to plug into the Cisco device. So it's now becoming this crazy thing to finally plug into all of these different pieces and have that there. I really like the fact that you at least have to know that piece of the cable to have those things there. It becomes really, really useful on those. Whenever I start working through the exam, some of you answered, by the way, crossover cable. Crossover cable is a different kind of cable. This is not a crossover cable. This is a rollover cable. They are two very, very different things. You don't want to get in a situation where you're confusing any one of those two things together, because they are absolutely a different kind of thing. And it's not a straight through cable. Straight through cable will be going pin 1 to pin 1, pin 2 to pin 2, pin 3 to pin 3. That's a straight through. This obviously is completely opposite of what a straight through might be. So that's one of those things you run into quite often. If you answered rollover cable or a Yoast cable on the list, then you got this one absolutely right. And if you didn't get it right, now you know. So that's the benefit of going through these study groups, is if you get it wrong, you just learn something, and you're not going to get it wrong on your exam. So that's a great one to go with. There's so many different cable types and cable connections and interfaces and port numbers and things you have to know for the Network Plus exam. Of course, all of this is in my videos. I take every single CompTIA exam objective and I make a video on it. I don't leave anything out. If it's on the exam objectives, there's a video about it. And what I've also done is taken all of the information from the videos and I put them into a single place. So if you're somebody who takes your own notes, you're great. But if you're somebody like me who doesn't take very good notes, or you haven't watched all of the videos and you don't want to miss anything, I have course notes already built for you that have exactly this information in there. Here's the course notes. In fact, let's scroll down a bit to those port numbers we were looking at. Here's the cables. Straight through cable. There's the straight through. Crossover cables, what they look like. There's the rollover cable right there in the course notes. It's all there. All these pieces from all of my videos, all of the details that you would need to know before going into the exam. It's not something that replaces the videos. It doesn't replace your book. It doesn't replace knowing all of this content. But if you're somebody who would like to have something that is a quick reference guide, because this is 15 pages of all Network Plus materials, and you can see all the pages actually on the screen right there. That is all of the content of the course notes, and they're only $10. So I try to price them so it's something that is also something reasonable. And it's a PDF file. It's a digital file. You download it immediately. You can put it on all of your devices straight away so that you don't have to wait to get back to your computer. You can have it on your mobile device, your computer, and as long as you're the only one looking at it, you can have them everywhere. So no matter where you are, you could still be studying for your Network Plus exam. Find out more about these course notes. You can go to ProfessorMesser.com/NPCN, Network Plus course notes. And of course, there's links on the website to find these course notes as well. And all of this goes back towards keeping the website running. So I want to thank everybody who has purchased the course notes up to this point. It goes a long way to making sure we're able to continue doing this. And I want to thank you for your support of the website. And for those of you considering the course notes, keep in mind it also helps keep things running here. So thanks so much for considering it. Let's do some more questions, shall we? I think I have a question that might help. Finally, we get to some multiple choice questions. Which of the following would be the best use of a protocol analyzer? And I've created some scenarios for you that you've been given a protocol analyzer. Now, what do you do with it? Well, you can do a number of things. You could map the wires inside of an Ethernet patch cable. You could identify which devices are responding to an ARP request. You could find all of the laser printers at a remote site. You could verify the functionality of a single Ethernet interface, or you could determine the length of an installed Ethernet cable. Now, this question, make sure you read these questions very carefully, because you can see, looking at this, you might be able to do 2 or 3 of these with a protocol analyzer. But I was really asking you which of these would be the best use of a protocol analyzer. And if you take the best into account, one of these is clearly the right answer. So make sure that you read through all of these very clearly and you're able to take into account what these might be. So which of these would be the best use of a protocol analyzer. In the chat room, folks asking, is there any mode of payment apart from a credit card? You can pay with PayPal. PayPal also takes e-checks, although there is a waiting period if you're paying with an e-check. But I do take those two types of payments as well. And I don't store any of this payment information on my site, whether it's a credit card or PayPal or anything else. It's all encrypted. It's directly to the payment provider, and I don't keep any of that information. I don't want any of that information on my website. You'll never get an email from me that says somebody gained access to your credit card information, because I don't have it. I don't want it. Don't give me the keys. I don't want that kind of responsibility. But I do encrypt everything extremely well. I have an extended validation certificate on my server. I take security extremely importantly. I've already told you my background. Security incredibly important to me. So I make sure they're very there. If you bought the course notes for the N10006, they're exactly the same. And if I do any updates, I always update them. So you can always download the latest one from your member login, and you'll have them there. So if you have the N10006 course notes, you're good to go, thankfully. So protocol analyzers, what would be the best use of a protocol analyzer? Let's see how we answered with this one. Well, 78% of you said identify what devices are responding to an ARP request. Nobody said determine the length of an installed Ethernet cable. Do we have a complete flip here? Could it be possible? We do have double digits here. 13% did say verify the functionality of a single Ethernet interface. And then 4%, a tie for third, is to map all the wires of an Ethernet patch cable and to find all the laser printers at a remote site. So what would it be? What would be the best use of a protocol analyzer? I worked many years for a company that all we did was make protocol analyzers. So this is something I did every day, was look at packets and go through the decodes and look at the information that's there and use these protocol analyzers. It was a lot of fun. It was a huge amount of fun being able to connect to somebody's network and see everything that was going on. This allows you to really get into the network and look packet by packet at what's happening. You usually connect to a switch and you redirect traffic, or you might have a physical tap and you go in place so you can see everything going back and forth between all of those. There's an open source and free version of a protocol analyzer that everybody uses called Wireshark. Go out to wireshark.org. Did I get it right? I think wireshark.org is a good place to go. Shark.org. And you can download Wireshark from their site. There's the big download link right there. It's a fantastic protocol analyzer as well. And it's a great way to see all of the traffic that's going back and forth on your network. If you're trying to analyze what an application is doing, you're trying to understand why a device is able to connect to another server, this is a great way to do it. If you need to know anything about anything on the network, this is the ultimate way to get that answer. The best way when you're troubleshooting the network, troubleshooting an application, troubleshooting a firewall, the best way to understand what's going on is to get a packet capture. And if you're talking to tech support with one of these problems, that's the first thing they're going to ask you. They're going to ask you, do you have a packet capture? Because that's what we need to know. We need to be able to see the packets, to be able to see what's going on. And so that's where this comes into play, and being able to understand exactly what's happening with these protocols. This indeed, mapping the wires inside of an Ethernet patch cable is best used. You'd probably use a cable tester. You could probably use a multimeter for that as well if they're next to each other. Find all the laser printers at a remote site would be hard to do with a protocol analyzer that you have in front of you. Now, there are protocol analyzers that you can have distributed, remotely connected, and that might be an idea, but that's not the best use of a protocol analyzer, especially since not all laser printers may be talking on the network at any particular time. That's not the easiest way. Probably the easiest way to find all the laser printers is to use the laser printing utility that sends out a query and gets a response back. That's probably the best way to do that. There is also verifying the functionality of a single Ethernet interface. A loopback cable or a loopback interface is generally the best way to do that. And determining the length of an installed Ethernet cable, something that's already installed, it's in the wall, it's going up, it's going across the room. A very good way to do that is with a TDR, a time domain reflectometer. That would not be a protocol analyzer. So the 77% of you said identify which devices are responding to an ARP request. Got this one absolutely right. Well done. I didn't really fool anybody with that one. So let's shift our gears a little bit then, and let's talk about wireless. Wireless standards is an important one to know for the exam. So I wanted to ask for the exam, which wireless standards operate exclusively in the 5 gigahertz frequency range? And I want you to pick two. There are two here that you do have to know. So here's your test to know which one. I put every one of them down. 802.11a, B, G, N, and AC. So you have to be able to know what frequencies these use, because different frequencies work differently. They have different dynamics associated with them. Some work better inside, some work better outside. Some work better in a warehouse, some work better in a conference room. So this is a good one to try to figure out which two of these would operate exclusively in the 5 gigahertz frequency range. What would it be? Maybe you know. If you do know, don't answer in the chat room. You should answer on Socrative.com. Go to the student login, to the room name Professor Messer, just as it's spelled on your screen right there, and you'll be able to answer the question as well. This is one that should be a slam dunk. If you know your wireless specifications, this is kind of a pure memorization question, but it's an important one to know, and you certainly may be asked about this on the exam. Okay. That was a good break. That 2-second break made a lot of sense to me. Let's see how we did with this one. Which wireless standard, I can't even see it because of my head there, works exclusively in the 5 gigahertz range? Pick two of these. How did we do? Well, let's see. Okay. And we're probably looking for the top two, I would guess. I don't have a way to determine guess number one and guess number two. And if we looked at the top two, I guess 802.11a got 35%. 802.11ac got 29. Kind of tied for second. It's kind of the other three are kind of tied. They're very close to each other, the B, the G, and the N. But is this really the right answer? I was looking for exclusively the 5 gigahertz frequency range. So what exactly are the standards that only use exclusively, meaning only using this 5 gigahertz frequency range? Let's have a look. I have the entire table right here. This is the same table from my videos for the wireless standards. This is the same table that is on the exam objectives. The information that's there, it's the same table that's in my course notes. And you can see on this table, the 5 gigahertz frequency is used exclusively on 802.11a. B uses 2.4, G uses 2.4. N can use either. N can use either 5 gigahertz or 2.4 gigahertz with this. Although the N standard, it can use either one of those for that piece. There's not really a but relating to that. And the other exclusive would be 802.11ac, which only uses 5 gigahertz. Now, if you have an 802.11ac wireless device and it says it operates at both 5 gigahertz and 2.4 gigahertz, it's doing 802.11ac at 5 gigahertz, and it's really doing 802.11n at 2.4 gigahertz. But they're backwards compatible. Your other wireless devices, they're running AC, are backwards compatible on the 2.4 gigahertz generally. It's not always the case, however. You have to check all your devices, make sure they're all compatible with that to know what the answers are. So based on that table, we can tell you that the folks that did answer those top two questions, 802.11a and 802.11ac, are both exclusive to the 5 gigahertz frequency range. Well done. Let's see if we're going to make it. Let's see. You folks did very well with that one, I must say. For those frequency ranges, you know your wireless material. You know your wireless standards. So well done with that one. Let's shift gears into more of the bits and bytes of a protocol, shall we? The question is, really can't even see it there. Let's put it big on the screen. Which of the following commands would be the best choice for determining an MTU size? Which would be the best choice for determining an MTU size? This is another one of those two-step questions. We have to know what an MTU size is. That would be useful. And then we also have to know what program we would use to help determine what that MTU is. And I have a number of choices, multiple choice, thankfully. Remember, no answering on the chat room. But your choices are pretty straightforward. You've got traceroute, ipconfig, dig, netstat, and ping. There's 5 to choose from there. Which one of these would be the best choice for determining an MTU size? I don't want to give anything away. I'll talk about why you would want to do this at all when we talk about the answer to this particular question. But this is something, as a network professional, you're going to need to know this. You will run into cases where you're going to need to know what the MTU size is. And this is the easiest way to do it. It's so easy using this particular tool to be able to determine what that happens to be. So maybe you know. If you know, go to Socrative.com and you can answer. Now stop Googling. Some of you are Googling. I can tell. I can tell when there's a lot of Googling going on because the numbers are very slow to increase on the list. And people are like, I don't know. Let's Google. Maybe I can. But pretend you're taking the exam. See if you can take some of these and get rid of them. See if there's certain of these commands that you know couldn't possibly be used for that, and it might be the others. That would at least narrow the focus a little bit. So don't spoil it by looking for the answer on the Google machine. Instead, take a guess, which is exactly the situation you'll be in when you sit down for the exam. So let's see how we did. Let's see how we're doing with the MTU size. We're all over the place. We aren't quite sure. We don't know. Let's see. Number 1 on our list, netstat at 33%. Kind of a tie for second would be dig and ping. And then a tie for third would be traceroute and ipconfig. So what is this MTU and why is this useful to us? This is something, this maximum transmission unit size is something that we use to send information across the network in an IP packet. We take this data and we send it across, but we can only send a certain amount of data at a time. Ethernet has a limit to the size of the frame, total frame that we can send through an Ethernet network. So based on that, we know that if we're starting to tunnel traffic, we're usually encapsulating things and trying to send them over a link. If we're sending already the maximum size of an Ethernet frame, and then we stick more in the front and back, it's never going to make its way down that network because Ethernet can't handle these frame sizes we're starting to build by creating these information that we're trying to tunnel through the network. So it's very common to see this MTU determination being used and being useful to know if you're doing a lot of SSL or IPsec tunnels, because those are going to encapsulate this data differently than on a standard Ethernet network. This becomes very useful. The challenge you get is that most of the time, the devices on both sides will negotiate and they will say, I can only send this much data at a time, so only send this much. Don't fragment this information, or feel free to fragment this information if you have to, but don't send it over a certain size. The problem is that certain applications don't like being fragmented, and they will send the traffic out and say, well, I'm sending this to you, but do not fragment. There's a bit that's in the IPv4 frame that says, don't fragment this. I'm sending it through. Do not cut it into smaller pieces. And that can create a problem if you're trying to send it through a big pipe of this encrypted connection and you're encapsulating, and now it's bigger than what the network can handle. So that's how this is all usually done dynamically. It's all usually done automatically. You usually never have to think about it. But there are these certain applications that just insist on not allowing you to fragment this information. And they'll send you a message back via an ICMP and say, nope, can't do it. Sorry. That doesn't work. Jumbo frames doesn't have an effect either because some of these networks that you're using to send this off are not supporting jumbo frame types. So you get a challenge with this. So how do you then determine over a particular link what the maximum transmission unit size might be? You use a very simple tool called ping. Ping is a great way to do this. One of the things you can do with ping is, of course, ping a device to see if it responds to you, so you know if the device is up and running. But you can also send to that device a certain amount of payload within the traffic that you're sending. That way you can send not just a "hi, how are you," but you can send "hi, how are you," and here's a briefcase full of stuff. And you can see if the briefcase makes it to the other side, all these papers and things that you're sending, this big chunk of data that you're sending to the other side. And if you don't get a response back, then you know that big chunk of data you're trying to send through couldn't get through that small little pipe. So you can start adjusting back the numbers. You can play around with the ping command and adjust the numbers. You use it depends on which operating system you're using. I think I'm using Windows here. And you can specify the length of the data that you're sending through. So you can start decreasing the length until you're finally able and figure out what is the biggest size that I could pass through that link. And now you know what the MTU should be set to on both sides manually, so that you don't run into these problems where I can't fragment, I'm going to drop the frames, which is not really helping anybody. It's not common to see that, but it's not uncommon that you would run into that particular issue. So it's one that you will be using the ping command to determine an MTU sometime in your career. Some of you more than others, and it becomes really handy. For those of you that looked at the answer, so ping actually was only 22% of you answered ping, but if you did answer ping, that would be absolutely correct. Traceroute is a great utility to determine what routers are between point A and point B, but it's not used to determine MTU. ipconfig tells us the IP configuration that's local on our Windows device, but of course, that's just telling us how IP configurations are set. It's not telling us how much traffic we're able to get from one side of the network to the other. This is a dig command. This is one where whenever I start running into these things, it becomes really useful. The dig command is one that's kind of like NSLOOKUP. It allows you to query a name server and get back and forth on these and be able to work through what is the IP address of Google. If I type in www.google.com, what IP address do I get? Dig can tell you that. And NetStat tells you a lot of information about the network statistics on your local machine, but again, doesn't tell you anything about what's really happening between point A and point B and how much data I can send across those links. With that MTU, it's the ping command. And again, if you answered ping, you got that one absolutely correct. Very useful to have that there. There are a number of scenarios where you might even want to test out this ping. You might want to build a tunnel. You might want to work through a couple of devices. You might want to set up an IPsec tunnel or an SSL tunnel, and you want to send traffic back and forth between those. So you might want a lab. And maybe you don't have multiple devices. Maybe you don't have devices that can support IPsec. What you'd really like is to have a lab all ready to go and all set up for you so that you can do this yourself. Well, the folks at GTS Learning have already done this. They have the Network Plus N10006 labs where you can go through a number of different labs and start some of these things up. Here's one on configuring VPN servers, a part 1 and a part 2, internet connection, DNS, firewalls and network address translation, network-based anti-malware, that's interesting, understanding how IPsec works, VPN with Radius, so we're doing username and password through a Radius server, vulnerabilities, network load balancing, security policies. It's extensive and has all the things you would expect to see for Network Plus and all the things you would need to know about Network Plus. So let's do understanding SNMP. I'm just going to choose one of these. It has the entire lab to the right side, and all the servers are over here, and I can just power them up. They're all virtual machines running out on the internet. I don't need any additional software because it's using HTML5 in my browser. I don't need to use Java. I don't need special plugins to make all of this work. It all just works to make that happen. And all my labs here, it's hard to see under my head that's there, but on labs, I could pop these out too and have them on a separate screen or a separate window. And they take you through each one of the tasks. Exercise 1, installing the simple network management protocol. And you can see screenshots of what you go through, exactly what to click on. It tells you what the different options are that you'll find. It is extensive in being able to work through this. So if you're using a modern browser, and I mean one in the last couple of years, if you're using Chrome or Firefox, even Internet Explorer, the latest Edge even uses HTML5, this will allow you to use this particular remote desktop view without any additional software. But if you do have an older browser or you're not able to use one of those newer ones, you can do exactly what we're doing here with Java. There's a nice plugin. It starts up the remote desktop, and it works just as well as the HTML5 is. It's just nice to be able to run these things without having additional software to get them going. Now, one thing about this Live Labs is that you can use them for an hour for free. You go to professormesser.com/netlabs. That is the special link that not only gives you an option to fill out a form and get an hour for free to see if this is really something you can use, but you also get a discounted price over going directly to the GTS Learning website. So these are special pricing just because you watched this particular study group. Let's go back over. I'll show you the server that we have here. It's booted up. We're connecting to it. You can see it's a Windows server that's here, and here we are. We're running on this server. It's a remote desktop connection, so we're getting a very nice response time from here. It's not like we're waiting on anything. In fact, we even have Wireshark running on this device and have it there. Let's start a capture on the Ethernet connection that's here, and we're going to grab data from the network and put it on here. I don't even know if I'm sending data across the network, so let's bring up the client side. I'm bringing up another machine that's here. And I can start sending information back and forth to the server so that I can see it in my Wireshark and having everything going back and forth. I can ping, I can set up the VPN, I can look at the MTUs, I can do all of these because these are full-blown Windows devices. I don't even really have to even follow the labs. They're just there. A very nice front end. Maybe it's something you can use if you don't want to build your own labs or have your own machines. Something you might want to consider. Go out to professormesser.com/netlabs and you can try this out for yourself. Free for an hour, and you can determine if this is something that makes sense for you. I want to thank the folks at GTS Learning as well. I wouldn't be able to demonstrate and show those capabilities of the labs. I like them a lot. A lot of the things that I do in my videos, a lot of the screenshots I get, I just go into the labs because they have all these virtual machines ready to go, and it makes things very, very easy to be able to do that. These are indeed full virtual machines. They're not emulators. They're not simulators. It's not like you'll click on something and it doesn't work. It's Windows. You can do anything in these environments, and you can't break anything. If you mess it up, you power down the device, you reset it, you power it back on, and it's exactly the way it was the first time you booted it up. It's a very nice set of tools to use. You won't break anything in your own environment as well. Make sure you have a look at the special pricing. Instead of $159, it's $99, and you can learn all about it at professormesser.com/netlabs. Let's do another question, shall we? I have one for you, and this is a multiple choice question, but it is a performance-based question. So this is one you can work through on this one. The question is, what connector is this? What connector is that? So I got a picture there of the connector that you would be able to see. It's a pretty big picture, I think. You should be able to determine from there. It's also on Socrative. You'll see it if you have the app open. Remember, don't answer in the chat room. But I do have options available, so you can do a multiple choice for this one, being able to work through these. The multiple choice answers are FC, LC, MTRJ, SC, ST. It's just a bunch of letters. I threw a bunch of letters up there. The problem, of course, is every single one of these is a fiber connection type. Each one of those. Is each one of those? Yes, each one of those is fiber connection type. They're all real. And it's really got to match back to what that particular question happens to be. So maybe you know what that is. You can answer that question by going out to Socrative.com, click the student login, and go to the room Professor Messer. And you'll be able to answer this question as well. Kind of watching the answers come in for those of you working through the details. This is one where you have to know all of these connector types by sight. And you'll run into this often when you're working on your network, is that there will be fiber connections, copper connections of many different kinds, and you'll need to purchase new cables or get a patch cable or figure out what piece is there. Oh, there's no pick on Socrative. I didn't put one there. Well, you can see it on the screen here. You're doing fine to see it there. I've got you covered. We got exactly the right stuff there. The big picture on the screen. What connector is that? Well, that's a good question. Whenever I start looking at all of these different fiber connectors, it's almost ridiculous. And when you start working with them in a production environment, for the Network Plus, you're learning about the most popular fiber connectors. There's many others as well. And there's new connector types all the time. As we increase the speeds and decrease the sizes of these devices, we're creating new connector types that we have to know. So you'll very often run across a new piece of equipment and you'll look at it and you're like, this is a brand new connector type we're not using in here yet. What is this? And you have to go learn about that, figure out what it is, and working through those connector types. Let's see how we did with this connector type. How did we do? Well, I got 49%. I guess that's we're almost to a majority. Almost half of us said MTRJ. Is it really? We kind of got a tie for second between FC, LC, and SC. And then hardly anybody, single digits, said ST. So that is a bit of a challenge in knowing what these are. These connector types and trying to keep track can be a challenge. But this particular connector type is an MTRJ. There is, as you can imagine, nobody can agree on what MTRJ stands for. This is the same way with many of these fiber connector types. People change the name after the connector is out, or they change it for their marketing materials, and other people use those. Often someone will make a mistake, and then we'll all start using the mistake. It's just the nature of the business. In this case, an MTRJ is the mechanical transfer register jack. Some people refer to it as the media termination recommended jack. That doesn't seem like that would be legitimate, does it? But yeah, there it is. MTRJ is what we call it. Nobody ever calls it I need a mechanical transfer register jack fiber cable connector, please. Now you need MTRJ. That's all you need. That's what most people would know about that one and getting it. Okay, it's MTRJ. Got it. That's the one you'll run into. So, by the way, if you are watching this for continuing education unit credit, that is our special code word of the month is MTRJ. If you want to take advantage of getting those CEUs, you can go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website and click on Contact Us. And in there, put that this is the April 2016 Network Plus Study Group, and you know the special code word, and it is MTRJ. And I'm the one reading them, so if you want to put a note in there as well, it's kind of nice to say hello and read those from you. And I will send you back a digital certification that indeed does tell you here is the continuing education unit credit that you can then take somewhere else and use that for whatever you're doing. It is the mechanical transfer. We are plugging it in to this connector. So there is a mechanics to it. It is locking it in too. You can't really see on this picture. There's a little lock on the top, so it clicks into the link. And it's very precise. Works quite well in being able to use this. We're using these smaller and smaller connectors. This is one of the smallest connectors you'll run into for fiber because you're able to put, it's kind of hard to see on this picture. Let me zoom up. Zoom, zoom, zoom. So on this picture, you can see you can fit both the transmit and the receive fibers on this same tiny connection. Let me get rid of my big fat, there we go. It's easier to see like that. So you've got these two holes there at the end. So instead of having two separate fiber connections or two separate interfaces you would have to use, we squeeze them into a much smaller place and plug them in simultaneously, which not only helps save space so we can fit more interfaces on a particular switch or a router or firewall, but it also means that we don't have to troubleshoot reversing the transmit and the receive if they were separate individual fibers on the network. So that becomes really helpful when you're working through those. So that is the MTRJ interface, and one that if you're working through the details of the Network Plus certification, you're going to need to know all of those different fiber types and be able to work with them. If you haven't seen the Network Plus objectives lately, you'll notice that all of the objectives have been changed a little bit. They're kind of new with these. There is a new format. You can kind of see it here. It's no longer the straight down the page checklist. They prettied it up. Unfortunately, they made it a little more difficult to figure out what particular components are underneath others. You kind of have to follow it a little bit differently on the screen, but it does contain exactly the same information as the older format. One thing they did in this newer format is they changed the version number. They reset it back to 1.0. They put a little version number at the bottom of the page. So it's something that we were keeping track of. You could download the latest exam objectives and know if you had the latest one because the version numbers were increasing. version 1, version 2, version 3, version 5, version 6. It was going up from there, and now we're back to version 1. So this isn't version 1 that it went back to version 1, and this is a new version 1. This is version 1 revision 2, or revision 2 version 1. It's hard to explain, but this is the latest. If you are downloading, maybe there's a version 2 of this out already. I haven't downloaded the latest ones, but if you don't have the exam objectives, you're doing yourself a disservice. Make sure you go to the CompTIA website, download the exam objectives, go to the Google machine, type in Google, say Mr. Google, give me, or is it Mrs. Google? Google, give me the CompTIA exam objectives, or just go to professormesser.com/objectives. I got a direct link there for you as well. And get those exam objectives. If you know everything that is on this list of objectives, you will pass your Network Plus exam. If you're trying to figure out, how do I know if I'm ready for the exam? Go to the exam objectives. How many of these can you check off? If you can check all of these off, then you're good to go. So this is one where this will tell you if you're ready. This is the one document that all of your training, all of your video watching, all of the books you're reading should all be based on what's in this objective list. You should be using this as your checklist, and take advantage of that. Be able to use it. Well, I can't believe we've come to the end of another study group. We do one of these every month for Network Plus. The next one will be in May, on May the 11th. We do these generally on a Wednesday at noon on the Eastern time zone. Right now we're in Eastern Daylight Time. Obviously, if you're watching this on the replay, none of this is going to be accurate for you. You might be watching this months in the future. So you can always go to professormesser.com/calendar and find out when all of the live events will be. Every month I do an A+ study group, a Network Plus study group, and a Security Plus study group. And I list those on the screen to have them there. So you'll be able to see if they are there as well. It becomes useful to have this and be able to work through those pieces. I do want to check one thing before we finish up today. I want to go back, see if my face is in my Twitter feed. I think we were sending out today. Indeed. So today you'll notice on Twitter, Facebook, and Google Plus that there is a new daily pop quiz for Network Plus. So you didn't know it because you were here in the live study group, but now there is a Network Plus pop quiz that will be coming out every day. Those of you that were asking for it, you wanted to have a daily pop quiz for networking. Now you've got one. So the first one has been released. You'll find it on Twitter, Facebook, Google Plus, and I will have also on my website under the category of Network Plus pop quiz questions. I will have an email subscription available for you on my website sometime this week. So there will be a way to make this consolidated, because I have an A+ pop quiz list and a Network Plus pop quiz list. I want it to be very clear what you're clicking on the screen. So I'm setting up one page with both of them so you can decide which one you want to join, or maybe you want to join both of them and get 2 pop quizzes every day, one for A+, one for Network Plus. Maybe there will be more of them of other topics. I'm just saying, just an idea. And that brings us kind of to the end of the main part of our study group for today. It's been an hour. I want to thank you for joining us. Make sure you stick around for the after show. I'll take your phone calls. For those of you that have to leave, I understand it's an hour, and you've been able to stay with us. I want to thank you for that. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for the chat room for being there. And I will, of course, be doing another one of these next month. We'll see you on the study group in May. Thanks for joining us this month. For everyone, we'll see you then. Thanks. That wasn't awkward at all. What kind of outro was that? And yet there it is. So it's now the after show. So let's that's what I get when I start thinking about multiple things. Oh, I haven't started the after show hosting yet. I haven't called into it. Can we finish what we're doing and then start the show up? That would be a good idea. I'm looking at the chat room now. The phone lines are going to be open in a moment as soon as I go through the process of actually doing this. For those of you that are working through this and watching this, you can also put things into the chat. You don't have to call. I have to call up, though, manually myself right now, so if you'll bear with me a moment. Let's call in to this thing. Did it go? Did it go beep, 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 beep?
Thank you for
You're welcome.
Host and call
yes. What do I do?
Enter your show number and press pound.
Okay. I'm going to enter my show number and do this.
Enter your 6-digit.
I will. And we're clicking things. Make sure. Welcome.
You are now in.
I know I am. So there we go. I am in the queue. So now I can take your phone calls. If you'd like to call in, the phone number that you can call on Skype for free with +1 855-785-7545. That's 855-785-RJ45. And you can participate. And we already have a call. What's that about? The 937 area code. Are you there, caller? What's your name?
Oh, my name's Garrett Schumacher.
Hey, Garrett, thanks for calling. What can we do for you?
My question is, well, it just piggybacks off what you just said. You mentioned how you were going to have a Network Plus question posted up on Facebook.
Oh, yes.
Will you do one for Security Plus as well?
It's never enough for you, is it, Garrett? It's always got to be something else.
I have all 3 certifications, but I don't claim to know everything, that being said.
Well, I don't either.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. And my goal is to absolutely create a Network Plus, an A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus study group and have all of these. I'm going to try to, and since I have a Security Plus study group next week, that's next Wednesday, my goal is to have that up and running by next week. So that's what I was alluding to that in the study group. I'm not sure why I just didn't say it before we finish the main part of the show. But yes, that is exactly the goal. And what I'm going to be doing is having every day an A+, a Network Plus, and a Security Plus pop quiz. You can subscribe to it with email. I'll probably come out, I think when I release these during the day, A+ comes out at 9:45 Eastern time. Network Plus is going to come out at 12:45 Eastern time, and Security Plus is going to come out at 3:45 Eastern time. So I'm kind of separating them out throughout the day, so you get a little goodness sprinkled in there throughout your work day, and you'll be able to take the pop quizzes at that particular time every day. So yes, that's my goal, and hopefully that's going to happen here next week. I'm excited.
Oh, okay. Sounds good.
That's great. And thank you for asking about that. And thanks for your encouragement. And you and everyone else is saying we should do more of these. And you're absolutely right. So we're going to.
Sounds great.
Thanks for calling.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
There is a lot of work to do to make that happen. What I'm starting to do is to write all of the questions a week ahead of time, which I'm not accustomed to doing. I'm the procrastinator that likes to wait until the last minute, but that doesn't work very well. You really just have to make sure that's there. The Network Plus Pop Quiz subscribe page is not quite ready yet. It's sort of not tested, but why don't I give you a link in the chat room? It will be on my website tomorrow, today, somewhere in there. There will be one on the website shortly. It's just not there right now. I'm going to bring up something on my screen that you can't see at the moment so that I can tell you what that link will be. And I'll put it in the chat room right now so that you'll be able to even try subscribing. I'm not even sure. It's a page. None of it's done right yet. You'll be sorry. I'm giving you this. I probably shouldn't do this. Nope, not going to because I've still got it in draft mode. Oh, well. So wait just a little bit. Tomorrow, I should have a link up. You'll find it on the website. It'll be one page to go to for all of the pop quizzes. So whether you're going to A+, Network Plus, whatever it is, everything will funnel you to this single page. I think that'll be the easiest way to make that happen. I've just got to get all of it up and running and get all the pieces there for you because that's the part that's going to be the hardest one is just making sure people can find what they need. Nobody wants to get an email that they didn't ask for, or they don't want to have to receive emails they didn't want. I don't want people clicking the spam button whenever they receive my emails. That's not the objective of this. So if you want to unsubscribe, there's always a link at the bottom of all of my emails that says, here's how you can unsubscribe. You click one button and say, stop sending this to me. And that's it. I never send them to you anymore. I try to make it very easy. When you click the "This is spam" button, it actually sends back a message to the provider that I use to send my emails. And when they get to a certain level, they come to me and say, what are you doing? Are you some kind of awful, horrible spammer? and I have to justify what we're doing. We've not even come close to getting to that point yet, but I'm telling you that that's what that spam button does. It sends a message back to the people that sent the emails. It actually does something. Can you believe that? That button that you click, but when you don't want to get an email, don't click that button. If it's legitimate, like from me, click the unsubscribe link. That's cool. Do that one. Don't call it spam if it's not spam. Now, if I send you spam, absolutely click the spam button. You should, but I'm not going to send you spam. I'm not going to send you something you didn't ask for. That is not the point of these. The point is to get you a daily pop quiz question, get you to answer it, see if you learn something that day, and then go to the next thing. I have no interest in, I don't share your email addresses with anybody. I have no interest in selling any of this email address information. This is not for somebody else. This is for what we're doing. I've made that commitment from the very beginning. Very clear to have that there. Very important. And it is one question a day. I knew there's somebody would ask. It indeed is one question a day. Now, that may not seem like a lot, but now I've got, for the A+ stuff, we're over 1,800 questions, 1,900 questions. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, it's only one a day, but I've been doing it for years. So it will quickly accumulate a nice list of questions on there and have those available. I think that's one that it's very useful, I think, to at least get the one question a day. And, of course, you can always go to the website. I have a category where it's stored every day. So if you miss a week or two, you can always go back and just go through them, shotgun through the questions one after the other. I'm going to use that same format that you have now for the A+, that you get a list and you click on it, very similar to the Socrative that we just used. So it's a very similar piece for that. There's no sign up yet for Network Plus. You'll have to check back tomorrow, the next day, somewhere in there and get with that. What trick question? There's no tricks. There's no tricks there. Sometimes not even funny, as it turns out. But it's definitely not a trick. It's clear whenever I put that E link in there, or the last E or F link, that last option in the pop quiz is never right. I absolutely do not have that set up properly. So we know that I don't have any intention of having those be a correct answer. They are well off the mark. Clearly. Let's see if I can give you a pop quiz for Network Plus. Where would it be? If you were a pop quiz, daily pop quiz sign up. Did I actually make it live already? Let's see. I'm going to view this page. Since you're there waiting and asking, that's for A+, so that's not it. It's probably this one that is not live yet with the Network Plus on it. I'll make this live. You can go to this one anyway. Let's click on this to edit it. Edit it. It's an awful looking page. It's kind of a temporary thing I was working on, but it's behind the scenes stuff, right? It's something you can try. We're going to publish this, and I'm going to give it to you right now in the chat room. If you're watching this afterwards, you can just go to my website, and you'll see there is a mailing list link on the top list. So here is chat room, the mailing list link. It only has Network Plus in there right now, so you'll be able to do that. There you go. I'm not even sure it works, actually. So you'll be able to tell me. You're my beta testers. It's the lazy web. I just have not gotten yesterday I was working on for those of you in the United States, our tax day is on Monday. And yesterday I was working on all these tax things, and I was meeting with financial people, and I was talking to the accountant, and we were writing checks over here, and I've got a home and I've got a business, and you can imagine it just complicates things. And so the entire day was spent doing that. And the entire day, I have a story for you as well in the after show. I knew there would be something I wanted to share with you. For those of you that were on my website, and somebody tell me whenever you are register for the Network Plus, you can tell me if this works or not. Yesterday at about 5 a.m. local time for me, my website went away. Well, it sort of went away. It halfway went away. It stopped working. We'll say that. And it stopped working for 30 minutes. This is a pretty significant outage. Now, fortunately, the website itself is one that not a lot of people in the United States need access to this at 5 in the morning, but I have a lot of people in the United Kingdom that were trying to access the server at this time. It was a real challenge. Oh, you were able to register for Network Plus pop quizzes. Yay. And you can see it's kind of ugly. I'm going to clean it up. For those of you, you understand, right? You're with me. And for those of you that you like Twitter instead, it's already on Twitter for the day. You like Facebook instead, it's already on my Facebook page. You like Google Plus instead, it's already on Google Plus. So you don't even have to register on email if you don't want to. So back to the story. So I call my provider and I said, hey, provider, network went away. And I did some studies. I did start looking at things and trying to figure out what happened during that time frame. And what I could tell sort of offhand is that there's an external network you use to get to my server, but then all my servers talk to each other on an internal network that you don't have access to. It uses 10 dot addressing. It's all private. But one of the challenges is that the network connection itself seemed to go away. And what I mean by that, I'll show you what I mean by that. Zoom up on a picture. So this is one of my web servers. Here we go. Here we go. This is a tool that I use called New Relic. It's a company called New Relic, and it's a tool they use. I'm going to show you this in a moment. And I can monitor things about my servers. I can monitor a lot of things about my servers. I can monitor PHP usage. I can measure response time for my clients. I can measure how much time is being spent on the web server versus the database server versus PHP. I can monitor a lot of different aspects of what's happening on my server. One of the things that I monitor is network traffic going out of each of the interfaces on my server. So this is the interface. You can see this is from about 5:30 in the morning to 6:30 in the morning. This is the interface that's external, that all of you out there in the world access. You come to my web server. This is what you were able to see during that time frame. This is one of my servers. So I have multiple web servers that are load balanced. Now this is the outside. This is what you were able to get to. On the inside of my network, this is what it looked like. So 5:30, we're going along fine. And then right about 5:40 something, notice that there's a really something unusual going on. So I called my provider and I said, hey, provider, internally, things were working. And then all of a sudden, my web servers, that's one of my web servers. Let me show you the other web server. Exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. So both web servers simultaneously stopped talking back to my database server. And if I look at the logs in Apache, that's my web server that I'm running, it tells me that it was able to process the request you were sending to the server, but it was not able to complete the request, and it sent back what they call an Apache 500 error on this. So I called my provider and I said, what's going on with the network? Why in the middle of the morning here am I suddenly not able to talk from my web servers back to my database server? And they didn't know. In fact, when it happened, I was sleeping as human beings should be, but of course they weren't. I don't know. They weren't sleeping. So they went in, they tried different things. They tried resetting different services I'm running. I use a type of reverse proxy internal to my servers to keep everything synchronized. It's a thing. I tried starting different other processes on my servers, but nobody ping, because I can go back and look at what they did on the server. Nobody pinged from my web server to my database server. This is the first thing you do, right? That's your first, what exactly Jess says, was it plugged in? That's your first question. Is it plugged in? Do you have connectivity between all of the devices that need to connect to each other? That's the first thing you do. They didn't do it. So I asked the question of the tech. I'm saying, why did they reset services on my server? And by the way, it was occurring on both servers simultaneously, so it was clearly not a independent server resource issue. It's something that happened globally across multiple servers simultaneously. So I said, why did nobody ping? I have videos on this that tell you the first thing you do is you ping. So I wanted to kind of bring this back to the Network Plus exam is that one of the first things when you troubleshoot a connection that's not working, because part of the Network Plus exams on troubleshooting, you check that you have an IP address. You check that you're able to, sometimes you even ping your loopback. That's one thing you could do to make sure your internal IP stack is working. Ping 127.0.0.1. Is my loopback pinging back to me? Yes, it is. Is my external interface pinging back to me that I got an IP address on? Yes, it is. So I'm feeling pretty good. The IP stack and is working on my individual computer. Now can I ping my default gateway, which is on my local subnet? Yes or no? So the ping is the first thing you do. Do I at least have a way to communicate out? And in this case, my provider for my web server, they are top notch. They are amazing people that provide me with, they were great with support. And quite honestly, problems like this happen. There are things that will occur during the lifetime of a server that causes an outage. It's not necessarily the outage that is really going to determine the value of the provider. It's what they do immediately afterwards. And my provider was great. They were able to jump on this, talk to the network guys, because I presented them with this. At first they said, well, we think you had what they call in the WordPress is an XML remote procedure call, XML RPC attack. And I looked at the logs and I said, it's not in the log. There was nobody attacking me. That's not a log, but you know what I'm saying. I'm looking at the logs and there's nothing in there. They said, oh, well, let me go talk to the network guys. They went and talked to the network guys. Network guys came back initially and said, we're looking at the statistics during that time frame, and there was a slight decrease in traffic, but really nothing else that we can see. And that's when I put this picture together and said, that's a slight decrease in traffic? Somebody did not look at something. Somebody's given me a story. I've done this for a long time. You're telling me a story. And he said, wow, like that. You're right. That's not, he's on my side now. You're right. That's not really a slight decrease in traffic. That's zero traffic. And it was zero traffic. And so he went back and the answer was, oh yeah, we had an aggregation router problem. A router had to be restarted. It clearly did not switch over. It was supposed to switch over to a redundant link. It did not. And so I was out for that time frame. So that was a bit of a challenge getting to that point. But I wanted to show you that having these metrics here, some of the metrics that I pulled were gathered via SNMP. Some were gathered locally on the servers. I had statistics that were gathered in multiple places. Much of this was being rolled back to New Relic and stored there. And having all of that there becomes extremely important. Was I given credit for the downtime? I was not given a credit for the downtime. I am billed on usage, and I didn't use it. So I would like a credit. We haven't gotten to that point yet. He left me a voicemail last night. I was over it at that point, and I then had to prepare for this today. So I haven't got the credit yet. But I would hope that they would be nice enough to do something nice regarding that. So there you go. That was my little story about what was going on at my web server at 5:40 in the morning that I woke up to yesterday before dealing with the tax people. So that was my day. My day was just full of good stuff. I knew when it started like that, well, this is the day to do taxes, because now how much worse can it get? We'll just have all the bad stuff happen in one day, and then we're done. And now we're doing this. So it's much better. Much better to have this there than to work through those pieces. But it was so great to have those stats, because I was able to, when he said, oh, it's just a small decrease in traffic. Like, okay, now I've got to pull this out and show this to you and do this piece. Now, a lot of the people I talk to on the support lines are familiar with the website. And so, they do a pretty good job of okay, networking and security, so we can talk to you as network security, but the folks that I had on the phone weren't familiar. So I was trying to explain how I gathered this information. So they said, well, are you sure you gathered the right stuff? I am absolutely sure I gathered the right stuff. And that would be why in going through this, those pieces. Yeah, the tax day stuff has been exciting. There's been a lot of security stuff relating to the taxes this year. The IRS got a bad set of attacks earlier on in the year, first thing, and they seem to have locked those down, or at least not told us anymore were occurring. We'll have to see how that works through there. My level 1 tech support that I'm calling into on my provider is amazing. I'm talking to the folks that fix the problem. When I was setting up these servers and doing redundant links with load balancers, I needed reverse proxies. I needed to configure some very specific things, and they configured them for me. I don't talk to a person that takes the message and they send it on to the next person. The person that picks up the phone is the one that fixes my issues or takes care of my problems. So it's one that I really like having that there and being able to work through them. I think that's whenever I start working with people like that, that's when I know I got a good provider, and having that there in those pieces. The other network story, I need to find this now that we've been talking about this, that I found remarkable this week. Let me hunt this down. This would be in the news. Pardon me. It is the holiday season for pollen in my part of the world. So you can tell I'm drinking a little bit more congested as we're going through this. I'm trying to find this news story that I found earlier. Okay, there were a couple of these relating to this. I'll hunt it down and we'll go through these pieces in this and being able to work through those pieces. I have not filed my taxes yet. This is the thing that earlier in the year, the IRS had a problem with the security of people gaining access to taxes, that they would effectively file taxes for people because they were able to circumvent the personal identification number system they had set up for security on their network. They were able to grab people's information without having any type of security requirement. They were able to get last year's tax forms sent to them, and then they effectively just used the tax information to file taxes for those people immediately. It's why it happened very early at the beginning of the year. So they filed taxes for these people and took the checks. They filed them in a way that they would get money back, which never happens for me. You're welcome to file mine and pay it, but for these people, they were filing it with completely made up numbers so that they would be given a check and got the money. Money was deposited, and of course, that money's gone. And that was the big security hole that they closed, but not before they did this with many, many different connections. It was a challenge having that there. The story I saw this week that really bothered me, you probably even saw this as well. It was this in Kansas. There's this house that is everybody hates this house, and by everybody I mean creditors, the U.S. government. Because there is an IP address to GPS service, a company that tries to match your IP address to your physical address. And obviously, this is a problem if it's wrong. And in this particular case, the company that was creating this link between an IP address and a physical address, if they really didn't know where the physical address was, they put the IP address or the physical address in the exact center of the United States, if it was a U.S. address. Now, they didn't put it in the exact center. They rounded up or down the numbers, but they have it just around, it's about 2 hours away from the center. They put it at this, what effectively now is this house in Kansas. And the problem is that if they don't have a physical address for an IP, it all defaults back to this house. So you can imagine if the government has found you doing something illegal online and your IP address comes up and they use this service to figure out where it is, they think it's in this house. If a creditor is looking at your IP addresses you used to log in and it has no location associated with it, they think it's this house. So there are thousands and thousands and thousands of IP addresses pointing back to this house. And there have been federal agents that have gone in and raided the house looking for a laptop because the laptop was shown to be here, but it wasn't. They just chose this as a default. And this poor house is being, there's people showing up on the front lawn, leaving things on the front lawn, banging on the house, calling the house. It's a horrible, horrible challenge. And now they have to try to fix it. The problem was that the company doing the matching had no idea this was going on until the reporter contacted them. They had no idea that these people in this house were being inundated, and the people in the house had no idea why either. Nobody knew why, and this reporter put it together. This journalist realized, here's the problem, went to the company, and the company said, oh, well, that's horrible. Whenever I worked at a security company, we did firewalls, and it also did IP to address, in our case, country mapping. If we didn't know where you were, if that IP address, we couldn't figure it out, it wasn't in our records, we stuck it in the middle of the Atlantic. So that way it was on the map, but you didn't have anybody visiting the middle of the Atlantic looking for these particular people attacking your network because there's nothing there. It's a bunch of water. And they probably should have done the same thing with this, but they didn't. So they're in the process of trying to figure out now how to undo all of this, but there's just tons of applications that use this company's database. And so now it's this trickle process and now has to trickle down into all of those pieces. What a challenge, isn't it? Isn't that amazing that this poor house? Imagine if that was your house. This reporter also did the reverse study and said, show me all of the addresses that have multiple IP addresses associated with them, and found not as many as this house in Kansas, but found some houses. There's one in Atlanta they found with hundreds of IP addresses associated with it, ostensibly because the addresses, the houses around them did not have internet access. So all of those houses suddenly were associated with this particular geographic house. So isn't that remarkable? Nobody around them, fortunately, in Atlanta had done anything wrong, so the owners of the house had no idea that was the issue. It is absolutely crazy the way we're letting technology lead us. Kind of like the people that follow the GPS and aren't even thinking, oh, it said turn right, and they went right into a canal. It said turn right. Well, didn't you see the canal? Yeah, I saw the canal, but it said to turn right. It's that level of leading us, having the technology lead us by the nose and taking it at face value and not having an understanding of what's really going on behind the scenes. Yeah, we do know who the FBI hired to hack the iPhone of San Bernardino attackers. It was an Israeli company. What's their name? iPhone hack. And the Google machine says it's Celebrite. There you go. That's the Israeli mobile forensics firm that was able to find a way to, they did not hack the phone. They found a way around the brute force process, allegedly. We don't know for sure, but we believe that's what it was. The security piece on our mobile devices, that story just has not been, that's not something that has been figured out quite yet. That's a story that's not over yet. We got a lot more to do. Usually I talk about the security things on the Security Plus study group, being able to have that there. Yeah, Celebrite. Ask your doctor if Celebrite is right for you. Maybe that's what it is. It's medicine. No, it's an Israeli company. Well, of course, they, who would really want to get into that phone really bad? Let's get the Israeli company in. They will absolutely do it. And boy, they did. And the FBI, they haven't quite pulled off the need to get into these mobile devices. But it's very interesting what's going on. Apple has Apple or nobody else has a requirement to build hacking software to get into their systems. The way to get into this did not exist. A way to circumvent this brute force did not exist. So there was no legal precedent. There's nothing legally that would have required Apple to help with this. They were stuck in the middle. doing this. And as it turns out, they didn't need to help. The system worked exactly the way it should. There are people available that can get into these systems, and they did. And the real interesting part for me will be what the next hardware and software combination is going to be. Can Apple or anyone else, because encryption happens on the Android operating systems and in the Windows Phone as well, can they make a device that can't be hacked? So I think we will see the answer to that shortly. We will see if they're able to do it. Every time somebody comes out with something that says this can't be hacked, we end up hacking it. So we will see if this actually turns out to be the case. Right, it's the Titanic. This can't sink. Oops, this can't be hacked. And I don't think you'll see anyone come out and say, we've created a mobile device that can't be hacked. They'll instead say, we've created a mobile device that's very difficult to circumvent security, and see what that works. I think the existing architecture that Apple has, there's a great white paper that talks about the latest iOS and the latest hardware and the security enclave. That is the technology that's within these devices that provides this level of encryption. It is remarkable, and the white paper does a great job. It's very short, goes through the specifics of the technology. If you wanted to understand more about how is this working, really, how is it able to secure this? How can we not just get a key, figure out the encryption key, and decrypt everything? Certainly the government would be able to do that. So that is one easy way to do that and make that happen. I really like being able to work through those pieces and have that there. Let's see if we can get other things configured with those. Let's have a look. I'm going to bring up a few things on my screen as well. I've been working on these this other pop quizzes all last week because I wanted to have these new pop quizzes out. So there's pop quizzes already written for the rest of the week for Network Plus. There's pop quizzes written through a lot of the other pieces as well. So make sure you go through and have a look at those as the next days come up with those pieces. And have that there. There is, for those of you, a lot of routing going on in the study group. Let me shut down the Socrative. So there's no more of that. We won't need to do any more Socrative pieces today. So for those of you that are watching the replay, obviously Socrative not available for those and being able to work through it and have those there. Now the Network Plus exam is one, especially the latest version of the Network Plus exam, you do get into more of the IP addressing piece. Somebody was asking me earlier, hey, why don't we do some more subnetting? And some of the study groups, we do more CIDR block addressing. I do some of the subnetting. Clearly, the folks at CompTIA are moving more towards doing more with IP subnetting from the administrator perspective on the Network Plus exam instead of the A+. They've really changed the A+ quite a bit to get into those pieces. And in fact, they don't really go into a lot of detail in the exam objectives for the N10006. For instance, we go into route aggregation a little bit. Which section is that? 1.9. And this is where everything kind of gets into working at the binary level with route aggregation. Because the folks in the chat room were asking about like supernetting, which is effectively route aggregation. It's being able to reference multiple subnets with one single entry. That's really what we're doing. Instead of having, here's a route to A, here's a route to B, here's a route to C, here's a route to D, I could say, here's a route to E that covers all of those. And that's what route aggregation does. The best way to do route aggregation is exactly what I show on my video. Take all the addresses, all the networks that you want to aggregate, and just write out the binary version of these. And you'll be able to see exactly where the things are that are alike, all the way up to the point where they start to change. And right at the point where you start to change is where you draw the line. That's your aggregation point with these. So if you can draw the line right there, it's kind of right in the middle of the third octet. So it's 4 4 bits into the third octet, and then you can spin on all the rest of those are zeros, then you can easily calculate what an aggregation would be for all of these networks. So imagine I could say to get to 192.168.98.0, 99.0, 100.0, 101.0, 102.0, 105.0, instead, if you want to go to any of those, I'm going to give you a route of 192.168.96.0 with a /20 mask, because that's how many bits I have in this particular case, and be able to use those all the way through this entire route. Now, that's a great way to do it. And you see I've got 20 bits. It's 8, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So that's where the /20 is coming from, is how many bits are going to stay the same, and then we've got the rest that are masked in all of this. That's route aggregation, and it's real pain to figure out initially, because you really do have to calculate everything out in a binary form. If you're not comfortable doing binary to decimal conversions, make sure you become very comfortable with that. You would always be using this what they call supernetting or route aggregation if you're planning to configure a routing table. So if I got all these 6 remote sites out there, and instead of putting 6 separate routes into my router, I put one route and say, now you can find all those by going out to that site. And that's the real benefit of having that supernet or the route aggregation. It's the same thing. People call them different names, but it's exactly the same thing. Being able to work through those. Yeah, the hex piece you also have to know for the Network Plus. No, you don't. That's the new A Plus. No, that's the Network Plus. Yeah, the hex stuff is new. But binary to decimal, decimal to binary will serve you very well when it comes to subnetting, when it comes to figuring out route aggregation. That's your key in going through those. Well, if you have different, they are exactly the same thing with those and the route aggregation. Comes in handy, though. You don't do them very often. You're usually calculating it up. You get your number, and now you can use that and move on to what you were doing. It's not like subnetting, where if you can find, you've been given an IP address and a subnet mask, find the network address, the broadcast, and all the different hosts that are valid on that network. If you can do that quickly, you're ready for the Cisco exams, because you have to do them in about 10 seconds. Give me those numbers in about 10 to 15 seconds so I can calculate this out. Route aggregation, supernetting, that takes a little bit more time to be able to work through. And you have to write everything out and figure out where the differences are. There's just no other way to do it. You can do it programmatically, of course. There are programs where you can type in all these addresses and it figures this out for you, but you don't have that luxury on the exam. You have to be able to work through those, have them all there. Let's go back and look at the other questions. Being able to work with those. Somebody had brought up more routing questions. Everybody's working on routing today, which is fine with me. Done a lot of routing and worked through those. So let's have a look at the routing tables. I think somebody was asking about other pieces of this. Let me have a look at my side, and I will find the pieces on this. So the ones we're looking through, some of you are asking about split horizon. That's 4.8. Let's pull that up. I'll give you an overview of that, because you'll run into that question too when you're setting up your routers and being able to get those running. 10006. Let's go through this. Okay. Actually holding out pretty good for these and having these here. Whenever you start working through the routing piece of this, becomes a lot of fun, actually. Routers are very specific in their operation. It makes it very easy to get on the router because they're going to work exactly the same way every time. And I find it's easy because they're effectively building out a map for you, which makes it exceptionally simple to start to start understanding where the traffic's going to go. The biggest problem that people tended to have when they were doing routing is that they would set the route to go out, but they never went to the router that was out there to tell it how to get back. That was our biggest issue with routing. And we're talking about people that do this, do it for a living. It's for what we do. That is one of the things you most often find challenges with, because you're always thinking relative to where you are, and you're forgetting that there needs to be a way to get back. They don't know how to find their way back. There's no way to do that. Well, there is a way to do it with source routing, but we don't generally use source routing on our networks. You generally use split horizon to prevent a loop on your network. That's really the only major use of split horizon. Usually it's when you're configuring a dynamic routing protocol, and the dynamic routing protocol is saying, these are the routes we're going to advertise. Now, what do you want to do with advertisements that you're receiving? Because obviously a dynamic routing protocol, all the routers are always talking to each other. They're saying, hey, if you need to get to these networks, I just want to let you know, you talk to me. I'll get them to where they need to go. And they send out the advertisements, and everybody keeps track of where all the different networks are and how to get to those different places. Different routing protocols use different methods to do that, but that's effectively how they all operate. Split horizon is one of the options you have when you're configuring your router. I'm setting up my router to use this particular dynamic routing protocol. Do you want to use split horizon on this? And it's an option that's available on almost all dynamic routing protocols. What this is that if you are receiving an announcement of a route, there's no reason to send that back to the person who just sent it to you, because that's normally what you would do. Normally, you take all of your routes and you broadcast them out, let everybody know, here's how I know how to get to these routes, even if you're the one who sent them to me. So you can see where split horizon becomes very useful, because you could be sending an update to a router saying, I know how to get there. And the router says, well, I just told you how to get there. Do we both know how to get there? Or do I know how to get there and you don't? How did this happen? Do we have a loop? I'll send it to you first, then you send it back to me. And then I'll end up sending it to you and send it back to me. And then I'll send it to you and back to me. And all you're doing is creating a loop. So instead of having that particular issue occur, when I'm receiving an advertisement from a particular router, I'm going to send back what I know, but I'm going to delete the things that you already know about, which just makes sense, doesn't it? That's sort of the normal, common way to prevent these things from happening. So one configuration problem you run into with these split horizon is that people don't enable it, and you end up getting a loop when split horizon commonly would, of course, be turned on. Now, there are cases where you might want to send out advertisements about a route that particular router knows about, because there's redundancy built into the back part of this. So you'll want to talk to the person in charge of routing in your environment, that might be you, to determine, should I be really re-advertising this back to the original source or not? Every network is a little bit differently, but almost everybody these days has a single route out to that particular place. There's usually not something along the back end, but sometimes there can be. So you want to be aware of that and work through those pieces. There's a pretty interesting set of questions that came in. Let me bring these up also, because whenever I have you register for this, there is a set of questions that you send to me. So let's bring these up. I've got those set aside as well. Questions in the chat room. Can you skip ahead? That's a really good question. That's one of the best questions ever, actually. And I don't have an answer for you either, quite honestly. Let's pull up your study group questions. We'll do those for a couple of minutes. We have a few left here before my voice gives out. I'm going to download these, have these available on my screen. I see some of you, I get a lot of people asking about ITIL study, the IT Infrastructure Library, which I don't plan on creating any content for that. It is a remarkably boring set of policies that for some reason, IT organizations are asking technicians to have this a particular certification of these ITIL fundamentals. And ITIL is just a broad set of policies, of processes and procedures. That's all it is. It's a way to organize your IT departments. It's really managers. An IT manager is someone who can really take advantage of ITIL. The folks who are configuring the routers and the firewalls and the switches, it's interesting to have a knowledge of it, but it's not a priority. It's very unusual to require an entry-level networking person to have that, but I do see it for some reason where people are doing that. I don't know why. And I'm not going to create any content for it because I just find it incredibly boring. And I'm only saying that because it's incredibly boring. I'm not saying that because of any other reason. It is a very boring topic. And you're speaking to someone who has a degree in management. It is not something that I find interesting at all. It's certainly not technical. However, it's very valid. It's a great infrastructure library. It works exceptionally well for organizing your IT environment, but that's why I'm not a manager in IT, because I just don't find that interesting at all to be able to work through it. So I'm not going to be creating any ITIL materials. I just find that to be painful. I'll go and find another job first before I do that. A lot of people ask about the OSI model. This comes up a lot, and I think because it's something that is very, it's not something you could touch. It's not an interface you can look at. It's not a cable that you can look at the pinouts on. It's a concept. It's an idea. It's kind of like these IT infrastructure library. It is something that you can't really touch, so it's sometimes hard to get your mind wrapped around the concepts of OSI. If you're running into this problem, the thing that I'm going to recommend is actually kind of weird, which is to download Wireshark. And I mentioned this in my videos. Download Wireshark and capture some packets, because the decode in Wireshark effectively steps you through the OSI model. It shows you the MAC addresses. That's layer 2. It shows you the IP addresses at layer 3. It shows you the TCP and UDP port numbers at layer 4. It shows you the application communication that's happening at layers 5, 6, and 7. And it breaks them out into these separate lines. And you can really see how the OSI model relates back to real world. Now, the OSI model isn't designed to be an exact, precise description of what's going on across the wire. It's a conceptual idea that we can see applied in the decodes and the traffic that we're sending over the network. But you're not going to find, and I get into fights about this all the time, ARP is layer 3. No, ARP is layer 2. Can we just call it 2.5 and go get a beer? Because I'm not at all interested in arguing about a concept that can't even apply back to reality. And neither should you. You should figure out why some people say it's layer 2 and why some people say it's layer 3 and why some people put it right in the middle. ARP is layer 2. But that aside, spend some time looking at a protocol decode. And the upside of that is going to be, once you start getting into Wireshark, capturing your own traffic and looking through it to determine where the OSI models are, you're now using Wireshark and you're capturing traffic, and you might even be able to tell what's going on the wire, which actually puts you well above a lot of people who are working in networking who've never touched a protocol analyzer. And I know it happens. I run into these people that they're in the networking department, they're configuring the switches and routers, but they've never had anybody sit down and show them a protocol analyzer. And the protocol analyzer answers every question about the network that you need to have. If you're trying to determine, is the slowdown on the network or is it with the application? Why is the application slow? What is it asking for? Is it encrypting the traffic or not encrypting the traffic? How much of that traffic is going over the network? It's all there. It's all in front of you. And it's not some set of statistics that you gather like the charts I had. It's raw packets. It's the actual information on the network wire. You really can't get more detailed than that. Very, very useful. There are questions on the Network Plus test that ask you to define what is in what OSI layer. And I have it in my video. Absolutely there is. to have that there. And you should know what those things are. You should know where is what OSI layer does a router operate at? What OSI layer does Telnet operate at? You should know those things. But the answers that are going to be on the exam are going to be very clear. They're not going to say what layer does ARP operate at and give you 2, 3, 4, and 5, because there's too much arguments about is it layer 2 or is it layer 3, and there's valid arguments on both sides that you could actually put it at layer 2.5. So they're not going to give you those kind of answers that are vague and could go either way. The answers on the Network Plus exam are very clear. If you know what the answer is, it's very obvious, even when they're asking for the best possible answer. Jess, I don't know what you're talking about, 3 and 5. Oh, the OSI layers? Oh, the ones I was talking about, the Telnet. See, you're about 15, 20 seconds behind what I'm saying. So sometimes I have to rewind. What did I say about that? And those router runs at layer 3, yes. Telnet is a layer 7 protocol. So there you go. Quite honestly, all applications really operate at 5, 6, and 7, but you tend to use the layer 7 to describe an application and the way that it's operating. Now you got a half right, and now you know. Now you can get it right on the exam. That is a white Rubik's Cube. It's actually a colored Rubik's Cube. Let's see if I can turn it on. I have to unplug very quick. It doesn't turn white. Let's see. There's wires everywhere. Where's the power? Do I have power? Oh, I have power. Let's see. The battery is low. You can't see it yet. There we go. So. My mic's in the way. It's not powered on. There we go. It's kind of hard to see with the lights on back there. Let's turn the lights off. I'll allow you to see the lights. It is a Rubik's Cube. It's an electronic Rubik's Cube. What are my backlights? My left and right backlight. Let's just get rid of the back ones. Off. Can we see it? Oh, ooh, there it is. It runs through sort of a sample demo kind of thing there when you first turn it on. There you go. And it does. It moves by. There it goes. Moves back and forth. Solves itself. Yay. And then keeps going. So that's what that is. It's kind of I'm sorry I don't have it up closer. It's not charged, or I'd bring it up to the actual camera. You'd be able to see it. And see, the battery's low, and now it's going to turn off. It's not doing a very good job of planning this out, am I? Sort of the way it goes. We'll charge it up for next time. Get those pieces there. It is cheating. And it's actually kind of difficult to use. You have to slide your finger for that piece. And I like to turn the thing when I'm doing that. That was a gift from my brother and my sister-in-law. And that was a perfect gift, isn't it? It was so good, I wanted to put it in the background of the shot. And that's where it sits. Normally it's turned around. See, it's got a charge light on it right now as I plugged it in. It's right next to an old, what motherboard is that? I think it's an old NLX motherboard and an Apple Cube. Got to see the back of my head there with those pieces. I don't know how much math you need to know for CSIA. I don't even know what the CSIA is. We're getting into some esoteric CSIA for those and those pieces. This is somebody was also asking about the MacBook that I have. For pretty much all I do is primarily on iOS. Obviously, I'm running information assurance. I'm running a lot of obviously Linux on my website, and I do a ton of Windows. The switching system that you're looking at is Windows. You're not looking at it, but the switching system that's showing me the console here, you can kind of see the screen I have to the left is the TriCaster that's running Windows. So I have a little bit of everything happening at the same time. And I use MacBooks for pretty much everything that I'm doing. And in the security world and networking world, I'm almost really, the security world is really moving very quickly to using MacBooks for what they do, primarily because they have the sort of the Unix underpinnings that you can do so much with, and a lot of the security tools are Unix and Linux related, so they run very well on this platform. On networking, I still tend to see network professionals using Windows for the most part, although a number of the people I worked with would run Linux on a Linux on a laptop and use that in their environments. And a few ran Mac, but the vast majority of network folks, and really a lot of the corporate security people use Windows too, because their end users were running Windows and they needed to run the same applications as their end users. So it made sense to do that as well. And it really doesn't matter what you use as long as the tools you use are available in that operating system. I don't think that's, I can't really point to one being better than another. Because everything has its advantages and disadvantages. For what I do, the operating system, the utilities, and what the video editing that I do works exceptionally well on the Mac, having the Thunderbolt, all the video outputs that you're seeing here, everything integrates perfectly. I don't have to do a lot of fighting with the operating system or third-party tools because everything fits together so nicely. And for me, I just need a one-click way to connect you to the screens that I'm seeing. You need to see the screen that's going to have the presentation. You need to be able to see the screen that has the Socrative or the Wireshark stuff on it. I need to be able to click a button and have you there. And the easiest way to do that is with those operating systems. But do you find the one that works for you? I don't think any of them are better or worse than anything else. You just need to hunt down and find the ones that are going to make sense for what you're doing. Well, that brings us to the end of an hour, and it brings me to the end of my voice. So I think that's really the key for determining when the particular study group is over, is I need to be able to talk for the rest of this. I want to thank everybody for joining me on this one. Of course, the next study group is next month. There it is, on May the 11th. If you're going to be around next week at this time, I have my weekly Security Plus study group. I like to meet for that. We'll talk about security-related things. I'll do another hour of Q&A. We'll open up the phone lines for another hour on the Security Plus study group, and we'll just rinse and repeat and see how much we know about Security Plus. And then, of course, we got plans for all of these that you can always find out by going to the calendar on the Professor Messer website at professormesser.com/calendar. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks for your ongoing support. Thanks for your questions that you send in throughout the month. I would not be able to do this without all of your support, and we'll see you next month on the study group. Thanks, everyone.